The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Well, last time we spoke, you said your favorite two cities for investment, and this was probably about a year and a half ago or so, maybe a year ago, was Medellín and Vladivostok, if I'm saying that correctly. And so I'd love to just start there. I don't know if you've done any research or anything has come up on your radar as far as those two cities since we talked. Does anything interest you there?
Well, Vladivostok, of course, is closed because you cannot buy Russian anything right now. But yeah, I have a fabulous prospect company in Vladivostok. It's a shipping and port. They own the port, and Vladivostok is going to be a great, great city for many reasons. Putin wants to make it a great city, and he will, and he is, but it doesn't matter. It's academic right now. I don't have any investments in Medellin. Well, I have one marijuana company in Colombia. I should ask you. You must be finding investments in Colombia.
Well, I just focus on real estate here. I've been investing in real estate here since 2015. And it was just amazing when COVID hit. They really went into a strict lockdown here. And I actually was able to get a humanitarian flight out because I didn't want any part of the lockdown. And I went and hung out in St. Bart's actually for a couple months with our good friend Hugh Hendry. I don't know if you remember Hugh.
Yeah.
Because that was the only place that was really open. And I thought that my real estate investments here would take a significant hit. Oddly enough, the real estate here has done just what it's done in the United States. And that's basically gone straight up. So it's bizarre that we're living in this world that where asset prices should be deflating. But they're actually increasing significantly. So I don't know how that ends. I don't know if you got any insight there.
Well, Medellin, you have the advantage that, they went through a long war, civil war. Call it what you will. And so prices weren't skyrocketing, going through the roof. Right now in Korea, it's a huge bubble, but that's because they started from a high place. And I would not think about buying property in Seoul right now. And so when it collapses, it's going to have a big collapse. But in Medellin, it started from nothing.
Yeah, right.
They had a horrible. I'm going to tell you a story. I don't have much time, but I remember a general told me, I went once when I was in Medellin once, he said, a guy would call up and say to a lady, call the owner of a property and say, I want to buy your property. The guy said, what are you talking about? My property's not for sale. And the guy said, if you don't sell it to me, I'm going to buy it from your widow. And sure enough, guy got killed and they bought it from his widow. That was the sort of thing that was happening in Medellin back in the drug wars and worse stories. So Medellin wasn't starting from a high level. That's my only idea of why Medellin has continued to rise. When you open up a country from a war or a civil war, the opportunities are fantastic and always have been. Because they start from a low base. There's no capital, there's no ambition, there's no energy. Everybody's depressed. So it can go on forever. Look at Japan after the war. I mean, I can use many examples.
Yeah.
When things get so depressed, the bull market or the upturn can go on for a long time. So you were genius.
Another thing that's fascinating, I just got back about a month ago, and I've been gone since the beginning of 2020. And I was in the United States, in Arizona and Florida, just trying to find a bit of freedom. And it was amazing that when I was back in the United States, there were a few places where the businesses really, really took a hit because of the lockdowns. But, the United States had all those PPP loans and stimulus checks and these artificial ways to prop up the economy through government deficit spending. So when things started to reopen, you didn't see a lot of the businesses change over, right? There wasn't a lot of turnover with the businesses. A lot of them had actually stayed afloat. Or when I came back to Medellin about a month ago, I mean, I'm in Poblado. I'm sure you're familiar with the area, in Provenza and Parquieras. And this is when all the cafes and the restaurants and the hotels, and not all of them, but I would say 50% of them are new. The old owner went out of business. They didn't have enough in savings, and they went belly up because they couldn't get the stimulus checks and the PPP loans. And so new owners came in, remodeled the space, and now has a new restaurant there catering. And it's just this vibrancy, but it reminded me of Schumpeter's creative destruction. And you see it right in front of your own eyes playing out in real time in Colombia. And I think that makes the market and the economy far more dynamic. Where in the United States, you see that atrophy that you kind of saw in Japan, because the government propping it up and not only allow businesses to fail. And what do you have any takes on that? I know that you've said so many times in the financial media that you got to let businesses fail. And that's one of the most important parts of capitalism, and let the people who make good decisions come in and take over the assets and then improve the economy and therefore improve society. But have you seen that in these emerging markets to a greater degree than in the West?
Well, of course, because usually in emerging markets, they don't have enough money to prop up failure, prop up disaster. It does happen, of course, everywhere. No, but in the US, we have the view that nobody should fail. Everybody should be saved and propped up. There should be no victims. Fortunately, there are still markets like Colombia where they don't have that attitude, partially because of their own history, because of the war. I mean, they couldn't prop people up. No, and Colombia, you know the story. I mean, we went through this long civil war and drug wars and everything else. No, I met a general at the ex-president's house in Medellín once, and he was telling me that, I spent a lot of my career trying to kill these guys and put them in jail, and now I am one. He was a marijuana farmer. It's legal now. It's legal now in Colombia, and so everybody changed with the world, and are now prospering. No, I'm very envious of you, and very proud of you. Very proud to be speaking to you in Medellín.
So they've got an election coming up. It's in a few months, I believe. And a lot of the people here are worried because the guy that's in the lead right now was good buddies with Chavez. And he kind of has that same Chavez, like Maduro type of mindset. So as an investor, is that something that would concern you, or is that something that's kind of just noise?
Well, again, I am not there, and I'm not up to date. I must, to my chagrin. But you have to worry about that. I mean, if it is going to be Castro taking over Colombia, it's not going to be fun. But usually, guys like this scare people. But then when they get into power, they realize that they have to make things better, both for themselves and for the country. I just don't know. I don't know. I do know that Colombia has astonishing possibilities. They've got assets. They've got everything. And Medellín is such a beautiful, gorgeous city, and so big. Many possibilities. But George, I just don't know, because I'm not up to date.
Yeah. I remember going back to 1982, I believe, you bought shares in Germany, and they had just been kind of bottomed out doing nothing for, I think, like 15, 16, 17 years. And the catalyst, but you said the economy was booming, but the stock market just didn't get any love. Just no one was paying any attention to it. And they had I think it was the Democratic Christians or something. I think that was maybe the
Christian Democrats.
Yeah. And they had a guy that was claiming that he was going to be pro-business and he was going to be very kind to foreign direct investment and whatnot. And you told Jack Schwager that you were listening to him and you believed him. And another thing, I remember you saying that when Paul Volcker was saying that he wanted to break the back of inflation, that you believed him. So what makes you believe a politician, and what makes you not believe a politician?
Well, that's a good question. I guess we have to watch him on Rebel Capital. And to get,
when I interview him.
yes, get the real story. With the case of Volcker, it was partly because at the time, Jimmy Carter said to Volcker, you do whatever you have to. And I don't know how I knew that. I mean, I guess everybody must have known it, but Volcker knew what had to be done, and that's why they picked Volcker. But Volcker went to Carter and said, okay, this is not going to be fun. It's going to hurt a lot of people. And Carter says, I don't care what it takes. You do what you have to do. Now, I don't know if Carter knew what he was talking about, because he cost him the election when interest rates went skyrocketing. But that's one of the things that convinced me, because Volcker knew what to do, and Carter apparently had said, do it. I will take the pain. So that's one of the things, one reason I thought I knew what I was doing. I don't know. You read a lot of sources and put it all in your brain and hope you get it right.
Yeah. And same thing with the German guy, just reading a lot of sources.
German, especially. And the beauty of Germany in those days, I mean, it's probably hard to understand, but it was 40 years ago. But the German stock market was essentially unknown, undeveloped. The Germans, partly because of the war, still basically for most Germans, savings accounts were where they put their money.
Yeah, right.
The stock market was not very well known, not developed, not anything, and therefore it was very, very cheap. I remember speaking to a smart friend of mine in New York, and somehow or another we were talking about GE, and I said, well, Siemens is half the price. And as gigantic, as successful, as powerful, etc. And he looked at me like I was a madman. How can you talk about Siemens compared to GE? Right. But that was also the mentality of American investors back in those days. Most people, even in 1982, still only invested in stocks in New York, maybe over the counter, if not on the New York or the American. But I mean, those days are gone. Now we have everybody, they're all kind of MBAs on airplanes right now, flying around the world looking for new countries. But in those days, even the German stock market was unknown and ignored and ridiculed.